Hi, this is Rhett with testingtheory.com, and today I want to talk to you about when you should ask users versus when you should look at user behavior. This is age-old question of quantitative versus qualitative. When should you do both? When are they different? When should you use them? And we ran a very important test recently where we had some qualitative data really help us. So I want to review the test and help you to see a good time to use qualitative data. In this video, I also want to give you some pointers of when and how you should be using qualitative data. We recently had a test that we couldn't get A/B testing data on. There was an app question, and we couldn't get our SDK installed in the app soon enough to answer the question. And so we defaulted to going back to the website and using a survey to gather qualitative data about our business question in hand. As it turns out, the qualitative data ended up being very helpful, and it really answered the question. This got me thinking. Normally we would just do the A/B test and get the quantitative data. But the challenge is you can't always do that. Or there are times where you should be using qualitative data as well. And so I'm going to walk you through our thought process as we were thinking about using more qualitative data, or what the industry says about how qualitative data is so important and the why behind it. And as we were talking through this as a team, we realized that there was a devil's advocate for everything. So we had one person saying, hey, here's what the industry says, and we had another one of us being the devil's advocate. And I want to walk you through the thought process we went through as we were evaluating using more qualitative data on the site. Advocates of qualitative data will say things like, you need to know why something is working, and qualitative data will help you know why it is working. Now, as the devil's advocate, as we were discussing that, we were like, well, I don't need to know why something is working if it's working. If I run a test and I get more conversions or I get more revenue per visit, I don't care why, I just know it works. And so the first response is, does why matter if something works? And I would say more often than not, no, you don't need to know why, you just need to know it works. Those who advocate for qualitative data might then say something like this. If you know why something is working, you can know how to make it better. Now the devil's advocate response to that would be something like, I can make it better even if I don't know why something's working. I can take any page, any site, and I can evaluate how I can make it better by running good tests. And if I know why it's good or bad based on what someone says, I can make it better just because I know how to do good testing. The advocates of qualitative data may say something like this. If you know why something is working, it will keep you from continually guessing with a test. With a test, you're just guessing. But if you have qualitative data, you'll know exactly why something is working or not, and you won't have to guess. The devil's advocate to that might be something like, you have an extremely small sample size with most usability studies. And even in the survey, the response rates for surveys is never as high as 100% of your traffic. So the reality is, your small sample size might just lead you in the wrong direction. And so when you say you're just guessing, the reality is qualitative data is kind of just guessing too, because it's the opinions of a small sample size rather than the full data set of the visitors. Do you really want the people visiting your site who are not experts in optimization, not experts in your industry, and not experts in web design or flow through a website to give you ideas and opinions of how you should improve your website? Well, you might get some good ideas, but you also might just get a lot of opinions, and you might be guessing anyway. The advocates of qualitative data might say something like, hey, when you do qualitative data, you can get demographic information. So you know who these people are. You'll know if they're male or female. You'll know the demographics of your audience. And the response to that might be, hey, just because you know that 90% of these people are female, how is that actually going to change your site and how you implement your site? Now, it might change your products if you have a product site. You might sell different things if they're all female. But the reality is, usually when we're talking about site optimization, you are talking about optimizing the site experience. And the site experience, if it's good for females, it will be good for males. So optimizing your site based on demographic information is usually a pretty flawed assumption. Now, just to keep me honest here, you need to ask yourself this question. If you knew that there was a large demographic difference in your audience traffic, whether it's gender or race or education levels, if you knew that one of those was very different, would that actually change how you implemented the site? Would you make a site that was different because you had more men than women? Would you make a site that was different because you had more people of a certain race than a different people? If the answer is honestly yes, then by all means, do your demographic studies, but I would want to know how would you make a change to the site to influence some demographic information. The advocates for qualitative data might say something else. They might say, when you have qualitative data, you can ask people what they think before you actually make the changes. Now, with digital testing experience, it's so easy to make digital changes fast and cheaply. So you might as well just change it and see how they respond to it to get a better read on is this good for them or not, to get better data behind it because it's their user behavior and not just the words they say. So those are some of the arguments that people use to push qualitative data, and those are also the opposing arguments that I like to say, hey, I don't need as much qualitative data as you think I need because I have their actual user behavior. But I do want to walk you through this example of a test we just ran where we used qualitative data, and it was very helpful. So we had this business question: should we have visitors see the app first or the web first? So when people are coming to our mobile web experience, we had this question of should we send them to the app? The app is the exact same thing almost, but we had the technical team asking people or just sending people right to the app. And some people were like, hey, should we send them to the app or should we just give them the mobile web experience? And so because we couldn't get the SDKs installed soon enough inside the app to create a true comparison of web versus mobile, we decided that on the web experience, we would just ask them if they preferred, if they knew about the app, and then we wanted to ask them if they preferred the web experience or the app experience. So the first thing that we learned from this test, which is extremely valuable, is that 25% of the people didn't even know about the app. We thought the number would be much lower. We thought everyone knew about our app. But that kind of information from a qualitative survey is very valuable. Knowledge gaps or things that people know, that's not something you can test. But if you want to ask people what they know, did you know about this? Were you aware of this? That's a great time to use qualitative data. Now, the next question that we asked them, if they knew about the app, was the most important, the one we were trying to answer from the business perspective. We wanted to know if they preferred the mobile experience, the mobile web, or if they preferred the mobile app experience. And there was a lot of strong opinions inside the company. Some thought it had to be the app. Some thought it had to be the web because they were on the web, they could choose. And when the data came back, it was so refreshing to have an answer. And the answer was that the visitor knew what they wanted. It turns out that about 50% of people said they prefer the mobile app, and about 50% of people said they prefer mobile web. And when you look at the responses, there's a lot of strong opinions either way. Some people will be like, I prefer the app because it's easier. And on the other side of the fence, you have people say, I prefer the web because it's easier. Some people say, I prefer the app because it has all the content I need. And other people say, I prefer the web because it has all the content I need. What we found was there was a ton of opinion one way or the other, and it came down to people's preferences. That's the real thing about qualitative data. It's all people's opinion. It's what people think. That's why it's qualitative. And so basing any decision on qualitative data is immediately very risky because you're going off people's opinions. And that's where their actual behavior is better. We found that by asking them, they do prefer a 50-50 split between the web and the app. And so that helps us know that we don't need to be forcing anything on them because they have preferences one way or the other. That's good to know. Know people's preferences. Find out their preferences with qualitative data. But be careful not to let that sway or dissuade you from doing A/B testing and getting actual site visitor behavior in an unbiased way where there isn't preferences, there isn't opinions, there's just good data. So when and how should you be using qualitative data? The first thing to consider is when you want to initiate that qualitative survey or usability study. And it's important to do it in context, especially with a survey. You want to make sure that's initiated based on some action or some behavior so that you know something already about these people. They're in this content area, or they're in this site section, or they're doing this type of behavior. That's when you need to initiate your qualitative data, your survey. The second thing you need to do after you initiate the survey based on some action is you need to ask them questions that are appropriate for qualitative data. Make sure you're not asking questions that could be measured with behavior. You want to ask things about their knowledge gaps. You want to ask about their opinions, their preferences. You want to ask about their demographics. Ask things that are their opinions, their preferences, these qualitative things that you can't actually measure. I can't measure someone's opinion. I can't measure someone's knowledge gap. All I can do is ask people. Make sure you use qualitative surveys and data to get qualitative information that's relevant that isn't user behavior. And finally, the most important thing, after you've initiated the survey based on the right behavior, after you've asked them good questions about their opinions or their preferences or their knowledge gaps, make sure finally that you realize that this qualitative data, these survey questions, are just people's opinions. That's all it is. So don't bet the farm on people's opinions. Don't make drastic changes on people's opinions. Use those opinions to inform ideation to make sure you're running better A/B tests, better multivariate tests, and make your testing and your actual site behavior data the way that you're making your decisions. Make sure you use quantitative data before qualitative data. When you can get quantitative data, Use qualitative data the right way to make sure you're getting information about people's knowledge gaps, about their preferences, their opinions, their demographics. And of course, always, you do want to augment your quantitative data with good qualitative surveys and information. So I'm a fan of qualitative data. Use it when you should. Make sure you're using it in the right way and you're not substituting good quantitative data with qualitative data. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful, please hit that thumbs up, give me that like so I know that it was valuable to you. And you can also visit me at testingtheory.com where you can learn more about A/B testing, the principles and strategies behind good testing, because testingtheory.com is where you come to get better testing and more conversions.